And we have breaking news this afternoon. A plane has crashed in Rhea County, Tennessee. Emergency crews tell News Channel 9 it is a military training plane, possibly a T-35. The plane is thought to have gone down in the Pennine community off Reed Road, which is near the Rhea County Highway 27. We've just learned from the Tennessee Air National Guard the pilot apparently ejected before the plane went down and is safe at this time. No damage has been done to surrounding property. News Channel 9 has a crew on the scene. Depend on us to bring you the latest information as soon as it becomes available.
We're checking to see if the plane was based at Dobbins Air Force Base near Atlanta. We have had reports the pilot escaped from the crash. We've also had reports that there was a fire. Told that the pilot did live, in fact, is suffering a broken ankle, and he is with the plane right now. We have a crew on the scene in Rhea County. We'll bring you more information. Once again, plane crash in Rhea County, Tennessee, involving an FA-18 military fighter jet. We're working to bring you more information. I'm Russell Martin, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
And he started heading south in a southerly direction, and he banked, and I heard 3 more boom, boom, booms, and then I seen a big, almost like a mushroom, black smoke come up.
Authorities have blocked off the area. We do have crews arriving on the scene, and we'll bring you more details as they become available.
It was headed southbound. The right engine was flaring out, and flames was coming out the back.
A Navy F-18 hits power lines and crashes to the ground in an empty field in Rhea County, Tennessee. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Calvin Sneed is in for Mary Ellen Locher this evening. A Navy F-18 has crashed in Rhea County.
News Channel 9's Mike Dunn is at the scene of that crash. Mike, what can you tell us?
Calvin, I can tell you that a $57 million aircraft is spread out all along this field behind me, just beyond those railroad tracks. We are very lucky, however, that it is there and not across the street, because as I talk to you now, I look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different buildings where that aircraft could have smashed into after it apparently had some kind of an accident in the Watts Bar area. In fact, it came over the populated part of Spring City into this more rural area of Rhea County, and a policeman was inside his home and heard what he knew was something wrong.
But every time it would thump, flame would come out the back, and I said, well, that's not good.
Randy Cahey's not good turned into disaster this morning as a Navy F-18 crashed into a Rhea County farm field. The pilot ejected and broke a leg during his parachute landing. Rhea County Sheriff Mike Neal says the problem started as the pilot flew over the Watts Bar area.
The aircraft struck at least 2 to 3 power lines close to Watts Bar nuclear plant, and it has caused a forest fire up in that area.
Neal says the pilot continued his flight beyond Spring City before ejecting and crashing the jet.
He had it under control the whole time. I think he put it right there through skill and on purpose.
Now, the pilot ejected from that aircraft. He was injured in the parachute landing. He has a broken leg. He was taken to Erlanger. No word on his condition in terms of how long the recovery will be or whether or not there'll be an investigation into his actions there, although that seems pretty safe to assume. We can tell you that we just got through chatting with Navy officials a little while ago. They are going to continue their investigation. There are more military officials heading this way. They'll be completing the investigation, including the FAA. And we also want to tell you that one of the reasons why we're not looking at scorched land behind us here is that the pilot dumped his fuel tanks a bit earlier in the Watts Bar area. They landed on Kudzu Island, one of them in the water, the other on the island itself. It exploded. It did create some kind of a fire. We've got Angela Lee on the scene there. She's going to join us at 6 o'clock with a live report from the situation there. Meanwhile, back to you, Calvin and Bob.
Okay, thanks.
Pilot's okay right now, or as okay as you can be when you have a broken leg. He was taken to Erlanger after he crashed in this field behind me right now. We have learned that he is based out of Atlanta, but was apparently flying back from Bristol. And an Air Force captain that we interviewed about 75 minutes or so says that he believes he may have been part of the flyover at the NASCAR race yesterday. But the fly back, well, that's when something went wrong.
I woke up and I heard it done a big old sound.
5-year-old Bradley Goodman and just about everybody else in Rhea County.
It was headed southbound. The right engine was flaring out, and flames was coming out the back, and it was like he was trying to either restart it or put it out. I'm not sure which.
That answer will come from investigators who are now picking apart the pieces of the F-18 that crashed into this Rhea County farm field.
The plane's a total loss. There's not hardly anything left of the plane.
Estimated value of the plane? Millions?
Probably.
So what caused the jet to crash?
The aircraft struck at least 2 to 3 power lines close to Watts Bar nuclear plant.
The jet continued southward, flying low and vertical.
I saw it had 2 engines. I didn't expect it to crash, but as soon as it went over the hill out of my sight, I saw the explosion and the smoke and called 911.
Ray County Sheriff Mike Neal rushed to the crash site and found the pilot.
At the time we arrived, what appeared to have a broken leg, but he was conscious and talking to us. So
I can't say whether the FAA is on its way. I imagine they will be. I do know, though, that the squadron from Naval Air Station Atlanta will be coming to investigate the incident.
Now they'll be investigating the crash site behind me and also where the fuel tanks were dropped after the pilot had that incident with the wires. He had presence of mind to drop fuel tanks, but they landed somewhere in the Watts Bar area, and that's where Angela Lee is now. She's been following that part of the story. Angela.
Mike, thank you. Originally, I was told that the pods landed at Kudzu Island and one hit and exploded. Now, just this last hour, we got on a boat and we went out to where those pods crashed, and the Sheriff's Department notified wildlife officers that 2 jettisoned fuel pods were dropped on Watts Bar Lake. Wildlife Management Area Officer Bernie Sweeney secured the pods, and then he was advised to bring them to the crash site. Wildlife Officer Jim Miller says when the pilot dropped the pods, it's believed it took down 2 of 3 power lines when that came down.
2 hot power lines came down, probably hit by the fuel tank.
As it fell.
As it fell from the jet.
Now Miller says approximately 50 acres of leaf litter burned from that. Now, we also found that we were actually 3/4 of a mile from Kudzu Island. The debris recovered of the pods, now I've been told, are about 2 feet to 2 feet long in one size and 3 foot long in the other size. There were 2 different pieces. Now, those were brought out of the lake about 3 p.m. and it was taken to where investigators are at the actual plane crash site. Kim?
Angie and Mike, thank you both.
Playing with Des, and it was wild.
Adam Brown made a run for Highway 27 thinking that's where the plane crashed. Initially, it was the sound he heard that made Brown think something was wrong.
We're sitting over here on the hill at our house, and a jet started coming in down this way. And when he shot up, man, 2 backfires come out. Then he like maneuvered off this way, and right when he got out on the tree line, he parachuted out and hit.
I heard it popping, and Adam said, "Wonder what that was." And we looked up, and one of the jets had fire shooting out his, I guess his jets, and big long flames.
Eyewitnesses say another jet hovered above, scoping the crash. Danny Brown saw the pilot taken away by ambulance. He's still getting over the shock of a big event in a small town.
I never thought I'd see a jet crash in a million years. I could have jumped over the house when it happened. But I'm glad nobody was hurt. I seen the parachute come out, and it seems like he's going to be all right.
Now, military officials say it might take another day to another week before they complete the investigation. Much of it depends on how quickly Civil Air Control completes that investigation. For now, we're live in Rhea County. Brian Hahn, News 12.
3 jets is being flown by Commander Kevin Hagenstadt, who crashed in Rhea County, Tennessee yesterday.
Navy officials say the commander was returning from a weekend flyover at the NASCAR race in Bristol. Good evening. Welcome to News Channel 9 at 5.
Navy investigators have been on the scene all day in Rhea County. It's still not clear if the pilot was in trouble before he clipped 3 TVA power lines or if he got into trouble after he hit the lines.
And investigators say it may be months before we have the answer to that. However, John Pless has been talking to some witnesses today who have their own opinions. Right, John?
Bob, there are a lot of opinions from witnesses who think they know what had happened just before the crash, but that is the job of the investigation team right now. They're at work down this roadway behind the train. As you can see behind me, it is closed off to the public. But everybody seems to agree on a couple of points. First, they believe that Commander Kevin Hagenstadt's plane developed some type of trouble with its engines just before the crash. And second, they're all calling him a hero for putting that plane down out of harm's way.
The $24 million fighter went down in a field, crashed and burned. The areas between a row of houses along Highway 27 and others closer to the Tidwell Berry Farms. This is where the Navy's mishap crew is trying to piece together what might have caused the crash. All day long, teams from the Naval Air Station in Atlanta coordinated with local authorities for security and cleanup operations. The F-18's fuel cells were dumped just to the east of the crash site near Watts Bar Lake. Some of TVA's 160,000-volt power lines were taken down and started fires in the woods. It's not clear yet whether the aircraft was flying too low and clipped the lines or if the fuel cells took them out. But witnesses credit Commander Kevin Hagenstadt with preventing any loss of life.
He seemed to pull maybe in the center as far as he could get away from both sides and picked him a spot. And I really think he's a hero.
Now, the latest word we have on Commander Hag fair to good condition. He was recovering at Erlanger Medical Center with that broken ankle, and as soon as he gets out of the hospital, he will of course speak with some of the investigators with the Navy to get his accounts of what happened just moments before the crash. He was part of a squadron called the Blue Dolphin Squadron based out of the Naval Air Station in Atlanta. Interesting point of history about that squadron. They've been there for some time, but the Navy was in the process of disbanding that squadron, if you will, moving them out of Atlanta and moving some of those members to other areas out of the country. His aircraft was scheduled to be retired and sent to a museum in Pennsylvania. Of course, we'll have more information as it develops from investigators here on the scene in Rhea County. Back to you in the studio.
All right, thanks, John. And there have been other recent crashes involving F-18s. Is anybody questioning their safety about these events?
Well, that's a good question, because anytime we hear of military hardware like aircraft that go down, you hear sometimes about the military asking all the aircraft of its type to be grounded until they inspect it. I did speak with a spokesperson with the Navy out of Atlanta, and he said that right now it's too early to engage in what's called a safety stand-down. He said that would have to come from top brass in Washington, and they'll have to look at what happened in those other crashes as well. But it's a possibility, but not yet.